You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, and my co-host, Keylon Harvey, your local mortgage experts right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, May 26th show. We are here to help you build a strong financial blueprint 1 week and one show at a time. If you're hearing my show at a different time, you are listening to a rebroadcast. To talk with us or connect with the guests that we have in studio, you can call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. And in studio right now, we have Linda Keylon with Sterling Johnston Real Estate. And we're going to be talking about strategies for buying and selling in our market. Linda, thank you so much for joining us in studio today.
Well, thanks for having me, Tina.
And a little bit about Linda is managing broker with Sterling Johnston Real Estate at their newly opened office in downtown Seattle. She's been a broker for more than 20 years, working with clients in many communities in the Puget Sound region. Linda represents both buyers and sellers and considers herself fortunate to be part of these major transitions in their lives. She's committed to providing a high level of personal and professional real estate services and considers good communication to be at the bedrock of their relationship. Linda holds CRS, Certified Residential Specialist, and SRES, Senior Real Estate Specialist designations, and has received several nominations from 5-Star Real Estate Agent Award, and she has 2 wonderful children.
Linda, we've established that it's a seller's market, so I'm curious to know what do sellers need to do to prepare their house for a listing?
You know, it seems like with everything we hear in the news on a daily basis, practically, it would seem that since we have such a strong seller's market, that perhaps sellers would not have to do anything, just put a sign in front of their house. And that's actually, there's more than one correct answer to that question about what do they need to do. And part of it depends on what their goal is. If getting their house sold very quickly is their primary concern, and sometimes we have clients that is their main concern. They're being transferred, they need to get their house sold, and so they just basically need it sold yesterday. However, if they need to, if part of their goal is to get the best terms and the best conditions in their sale, then we give them different advice, because putting some energy into fixing the house or doing something to make it present well is going to bring them the best buyer, and it's really worth their...
Well, taking advantage of this market, right? So you get those multiple offers and it can escalate, and, getting the top dollar would be that side of it. Exactly.
And I work a lot in the Seattle and King County market, but if just like looking at the properties that have sold since the beginning of the year in the Seattle market, looking at houses that are under $1 million, because that's sort of a different, there's more properties sold in that range. The average days on market is 15 days. So, it's going to sell if it's priced correctly and appropriately for its condition and location. But if you want to maximize your sale, you're going to want to probably put a little effort into it.
Well, and that's a great real estate advice is really to find out what their needs are, where their needs are, and then you can strategize and wrap everything around that and put your plan together. So I love that. So let's talk about remodeling. Does it really make sense for a seller to go ahead and remodel their home? I know that's going to kind of tie in a little bit to the strategy plan, but...
Sure, and that's an excellent question. And if you are a contractor that routinely buys houses, fixes them, and then sells them, then the answer to that is, well, yes, of course it makes sense to, go all out. However, if you're just a regular person who wants to sell their primary residence, then again, that's one of those cases where we give a little bit different advice to those clients. As we all know, putting in new things like new kitchens, new bathrooms, expanding the space in a house is very expensive.
Yes.
And also the other part is that you're guessing what your future buyers' tastes are going to be. And sometimes that works and sometimes that just doesn't work. So we suggest that if people want to perhaps need to make some improvements, that they do it very judiciously. And only do those things that are really going to help with the sale.
Yeah, and that just made me think of something, because if you can lower that price based on, get your really aggressive price because you're not putting anything in to remodel that home, and somebody can come in and get that better price, they can see and put the kitchen that they really want in there. That could be a really great strategy to go in with, possibly. Yes?
Yes, I think so. And so many buyers do want to actually come in and put their own style in their new home. So what our general recommendation is that people clean, paint, pack, and fix broken things.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and Linda, you were talking about the right price to list a property. Is it possible to overprice?
It seems sort of counterintuitive in this market, doesn't it, that you could possibly counterintuitive. But I think Carrie also mentioned earlier that it is possible to overprice. And before coming on today, I took a little look at what's going on in the Seattle market. And again, what I did is I looked at houses that were under $1 million and those that have been on the market for 30 days or more before they went under contract. These are sold properties. If you recall, the ones that the average is 15 days. But if you look at things that sell they took 30 days or more to sell, 89% of them had sold for less than their original sale price.
Yes.
Wow.
So obviously, it is possible to overprice. And what you really want to do is it's really important to price it sharply, understand the comparable properties that are very close to your home, and then price it in such a way that you're sort of in the middle of the range and that you get a lot of interest in the property.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So when you're wearing your seller hat, because I know you work with buyers and sellers, and when you're wearing your seller's hat and you've got all these multiple offers that come in, a seller may think it's all about price, but the reality is there's a lot more things that are coming in. And so how do you navigate and help your sellers, because they need to make the decision themselves on which offer they want, but how do you help and coach them to get to the best offer for them? And what is the difference between not just taking the highest price offer?
Exactly. I mean, and you really have to sit down with the seller and kind of show them all of the different conditions, because a purchase and sale contract has many different conditions in it other than price. It can be things like a closing date, and it can be things like inspections, or it can be other
Waiving financing.
Waiving financing.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. And in some cases, we have sellers who, with our difficult market, would really love to have an opportunity to rent back their house.
Hint, hint to buyers listening to the show, right?
Exactly.
Right?
And maybe, sometimes you might get an offer where this buyer doesn't have that flexibility and they can't offer you that as an option. Well, then you might actually, if someone comes in and can say, hey, I'll be glad to rent the house back to you for 6 weeks and I won't even charge you anything.
Yes.
And the seller might actually, that might tip the scale for the decision, or they might actually decide to choose an offer that is at a slightly lower price but has better conditions.
Well, speaking of offers, we know it's difficult to get a contingent offer accepted, particularly with all these crazy multiple offer scenarios that are coming down the pipe. What option does a person have when they also need to sell their home in order to buy?
Excellent question. Because this is the thing that we are up against. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have an inventory problem is that people would like to, they would like to sell, they would like to buy, but it's getting from selling to buying that is so difficult.
And they just give up and think, well, I'm just going to remodel. I got all this equity in my home. Why don't I just make my home what I want instead of moving?
And that's certainly an option. But sometimes people
it's not an option we want, but...
And sometimes there's really good reasons why maybe they want a smaller house, maybe they want a house in another neighborhood. There's reasons, but it's so what we try and do is sit with our clients and help them understand whether looking at something like a bridge loan, some kind of interim financing would work for them. And if a homeowner's been in a property for quite a while and has some good equity, that's a great option because, yes, it does cost a little bit, but on the other hand, it allows you to go in with an offer that is not contingent on the sale. And if you're in a multiple offer situation, it's very difficult.
Yeah, another thing that Carrie meant about important with buyers is to get pre-approved. And so, really, you've got your strategy that you need to go through with them as a buyer or a seller, and then as a buyer, the strategy piece with the financing. So, good advice, because a lot of people feel there's no options where they can qualify for mortgages, they can borrow a temporary loan from their 401k, so many different things they can do.
There is an end to a means. So kind of flipping over to the buying side, what preparations do you suggest to people who are just beginning to think about buying a home?
Well, again, I think that it's pretty basic. We want our buyers to be educated. We want them to really, first of all, I like to have them identify what their wants and needs and their likes are, so that they understand what it is that they are going to be out looking for. Then, of course, they need to get pre-approved. They need to understand, one, how much mortgage they can afford, and then secondly, how much mortgage they are comfortable with, because they are not always the same thing.
Yes.
Then I get them to go out and educate themselves about different neighborhoods that they might consider, and then find a real estate broker. I love it if it's me, but if it's not, it's a real estate broker and a mortgage loan officer too, both.
Yes.
People that you trust and that you feel will be will be advocating for you in the transaction.
Great advice. So we've talked about the crazy market here, and on the the buyer side. I mean, some neighborhoods have days of inventory left, and so we've talked about buyer fatigue, and really just sticking with it and not giving up. And so, what are you suggesting with your buyers that they can have that little extra edge? I love the advice of finding out if the seller needs to live there. I mean, go live with a parent or something, anything that you can do to give that extra period of time for the sellers to transition out and get into their new home. What else tips can you share?
Well, first of all, I really suggest that buyers need to be flexible, and that I think that they need to perhaps open their mind to perhaps different neighborhoods. If, for example, if you lost out on 3 offers on that totally fixed Craftsman in downtown Ballard, maybe you should consider expanding the neighborhood that you would look at, and that there are maybe other great areas that you would consider. I think part of it is being a little bit more flexible and maybe not trying to buy in the same neighborhood that everybody is trying to buy in. However, on the other end of making your offer more competitive, which I think is what you were getting at, in addition to those things which are that Carrie mentioned, would be to remove objections. Remove any objections to your offer that the seller might have. Waive the seller disclosure statement. Do a pre-inspection, and then the whole point of figuring out what the client's want list, the seller's want list is.
Yeah, love that.
And I've been thinking this whole time with all this competition, what about first-time home buyers thinking about getting into this crazy market? Do you have any advice specifically for them?
Poor first-time home buyers.
Right?
Yeah, it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough. What I try to do is get them to understand that their first home is not their forever home.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay? And that it's your money ahead if you buy something that's perhaps less than your perfect ideal house, because then you have at least a stake in the game. And then the third thing I try to remind them is when they hear about median prices, like the median price on the east side is $800,000, to remember that 50% of the houses are less than that.
Yes, yeah. So just having that understanding. So we've got to wrap up our time, but I want to ask you one more question here, because I know Keylon and I being in the mortgage industry, we know everything about mortgages and then some. But I know that there's buyers out there that think they need to have a 20% down payment, and so or they might have they might have a challenging credit score right now, so they're not going to get the best interest rate today. Or they don't have the money for a down payment, or they're 20%. What do you advise?
Yeah, I totally recommend that people not, forget about 20%. I suggest that they find a way to buy as soon as they can.
Yes.
And that even if they have to pay private mortgage insurance, their money ahead.
Yeah, love it. And we are totally on the same side. The common one is, I don't have the perfect credit score, I'm going to wait. Well, while you're waiting, interest rates are going up most likely. And while you're waiting, property values are going up. And if you don't wait, if the interest rate's that much better, you can refinance when you have that better credit score. So there's lots of options for a low down payment. You can actually do a buyout of mortgage insurance and not get stuck paying that monthly PMI. So thank you so much, Linda, for joining Keylon and I in studio today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And this is your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, signing off for the day.
And your co-host, Keylon Harvey.
And enjoy the rest of your Saturday and the rest of your weekend. We'll be here, same time, same place next week, right here at 1150 AM KKNW.